Good morning, everyone, and welcome here today to our Pink Shirt Day virtual event. I'm so glad that you are with us here today and that we are learning together all about Pink Shirt Day and about bullying. So, what is Pink Shirt Day? Pink Shirt Day is a day that we wear pink to show that we stand up against bullying, to show that we don't think that bullying is okay. Today, we will be talking about one of the biggest antidotes or solutions to bullying, which I think is one of the biggest antidotes or solutions to bullying, which is understanding and celebrating the diversity of the people around us. So, diversity is a big word. Diversity is the idea that we are all different. And there are no two people on the face of this planet who are exactly alike. We all look different. We have different skin colors, different hair colors. Some of us are short, some are tall. We have different skills and abilities, different things that are easy for us and different things that are hard for us. We also think differently. We have different cultures and different traditions, and we have different interests and different things that we like or dislike. There are so many ways to be different from each other. But even with all of these differences, we still have a lot in common. And we all deserve to be treated with respect. And we all deserve to feel like we belong. So, our presenter today is going to be sharing her experiences growing up with a cultural heritage that was different from every other student in her class. And she will help us understand how important it is to be respectful and inclusive and to celebrate the diversity of people around us. But before she does, I have a few housekeeping tips to help you make the most of our virtual experience today. So, the first thing is teachers, if you haven't already downloaded the resource package, I highly recommend doing that, as there are some activities that you can do after the event as well. Now, this is our plan for today. This is the welcome. Next, I will hand it over to Teoni and she will read her story and then chat a little bit about her story. Then we'll do a brain break and the Q&A. During the Q&A, if you have questions, there is a form linked in the description of the YouTube video. And you can to a Q&A form that you can use to ask your questions during the event. If you're in the Zoom meeting, you can just write your questions in the chat and I will see them there. So, like I said, my name is Haley, and I'm the lead educator here at Joyful Learning. And I'm coming to you from Fort Langley, which is right here, which means I am living on the traditional and unceded territory of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Kwantlen, Katzie, Semiahmoo, and Matsqui First Nations, who have lived on this land and cared for this land for thousands and thousands of years. Now, we have friends joining us from all across Canada. So if you can tell me on the Q&A form or in the chat where you are joining us from, I would love that. Our presenter today is Teoni, and she is a member of the Heiltsuk Nation from coastal BC, which is right here in the middle of the province on the coast. And she is the author of 3 books, Little Wolf, White Raven, and Avalone Woman. And they are picture books that are celebrating Indigenous cultures and traditions. And we're so lucky to have her with us here today to read Little Wolf and share a bit about her own experiences with bullying as we celebrate Pink Shirt Day together today. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to you, Teoni. Thank you for being here, and we look forward to hearing your story.
Yeah, Istokwa. That means, hello, how are you in my Heiltsuk language? I am on Vancouver Island, close to Victoria, in a place called East Souk. And just a little bit about myself. So the 3 stories that I have right now, it's part of the Little Wolf trilogy. And the trilogy means 3. I have worked as a reporter, a producer in radio, and have also done some writing for magazines. And you know something, I never thought I'd be a writer because I loved radio so much. And I thought writing seemed so hard. And then I was asked to write for a magazine many years ago. And I said, let me think about that for a couple of days. I thought about it and I thought, you know what? I will. So I wrote a column about music and the arts. And I discovered that I really liked writing. So always be open to new possibilities because you never know when you will find something that you really enjoy. So that was a great experience. And that's led me to doing a lot of writing since that time. And now the three books that I have out, which came out in 1 year during a pandemic, which I never would have believed could have happened. For one thing, books usually don't come out so quickly. It might have taken originally 3 years, but there was such a demand for books during our time of the pandemic, and people were reading a lot. So the publisher, Heritage House, decided they were just going to go for it and we would do it. So here we are today. Um, I will let you know that I will read this story. And so you'll be having the experience of having someone read to you. It's not read to you. It's not so much a visual presentation because I'm not super technical. So I don't have a PowerPoint presentation that will show you each page while I'm talking. Sounds really great. I'll need to get there. Oh, and I think I see some students. Hi there. I wish I was with you on your classrooms, but when we're very fortunate to have, I think, around 5,000 students with us today. For me to go to each classroom would be exciting, but it would take a very long time. So thank goodness for technology. We can be here today on Pink Shirt Day, which is a very important day, as Haley was outlining for you. And so my t-shirt today has a heart on it, a First Nations heart, and an eagle with feathers. And below that arch, it says, kindness is power. So here's my book, which you should be able to borrow from your school libraries or your local public libraries and a lot of bookstores. And it's even on BC ferries. If you live in BC and you take ferries, you know what that's all about. So we'll just get started and then I'll talk a little more about the book. And then if you have any questions, please bring them forward, okay? Pardon me. Had a bit of a cold recently. When her parents separated, little Wolf, her sister, and their mother moved from the country to a big city. The city was busy and noisy and made of concrete. Little Wolf felt as though she didn't belong there. She dreamed of living in the country again, surrounded by a forest and animals. And here's the illustration to go with that part of the story. You see Little Wolf and her mom, this little wolf there, and her little sister. And they're just arriving in a big city. Little Wolf was a spirit name that she secretly gave herself so that she could stay strong in the city's jungle. In the heart of the city, on one of its busiest streets, Little Wolf would sit on the front steps of her grandmother's house. She would howl at the full moon when she longed for the smell of the forest, and this animal song brought a smile to her heart. So she would sit there on the front steps going, oh, oh. And here is the illustration. You'll see that beautiful First Nations full moon, a shooting star, some hearts, and there she is. Since she was a baby, Little Wolf had a lazy eye, but this never stopped her from spotting a chickadee in a tree at the big park in her neighborhood or an owl under a bridge. And when she and her mom and her sister took the bus out to the farmlands to visit her cousins, Little Wolf always looked for hawks on fence posts and herons hunting in the fields for mice. There's a hawk. They're so beautiful. If you ever see one up close, really, really look at it. Study the feathers and the outline, the very strong body they have. One day, her cousin asked her how she always spotted wildlife everywhere she went. Little Wolf said, I look for the thing that is different on the land or in the ocean. And that thing that is different is usually an animal. These beautiful illustrations are done by an artist named Natasha Davies. She's originally from the Sauk Nation here on Vancouver Island. She's now living in the lower mainland of Vancouver. The city where Little Wolf lived was surrounded by a long seawall. Little Wolf loved walking along the seawall because she could look down into the water to spot otters. And on one early spring day, she put on her favorite red jacket and set out on her walk. And as she searched the shoreline, an otter started swimming alongside her. Little Wolf made sure she wore her red jacket every time she walked along the seawall so that the otter could pick her out from the other people. The otter found her all that spring, and they wandered along happily together on many days. Finding nature in the city made Little Wolf feel happy and more at home. Here you see this beautiful artwork. There's the Lionsgate Bridge in the background in Vancouver. There's the seawall. And there's the first otter she's ever had swimming along beside her. Now, the other kids at Little Wolf's school were from many cultures, but no one else was Indigenous like her. One day at recess, a large group of students surrounded Little Wolf and said mean things to her because of her heritage. They called her bad names. She was afraid. And those few minutes seemed to last forever. Little Wolf didn't know what to do or say to the kids. Suddenly, she found herself howling at the top of her lungs, and her wolf song made the mean kids go away. Here you have the artwork to go with him. Little Wolf's mom wanted her to feel good about her culture, and so once a week they went to beading classes together. And Little Wolf loved the smoky smell of tanned moose and deer hide that they sewed beads onto. She also joined a traditional West Coast dance class where she could pretend that the whole world was her dance floor. Little Wolf's mom told her stories about their family who lived on their territory for over 14,000 years. She told Little Wolf that their people are ocean people, and they have been making beautiful, sturdy canoes for as long as anyone can remember. And Little Wolf loved hearing what her ancestors ate, how her people still caught their own food, and how they entertained one another around a warm fire at night, telling stories of challenge and victory and love. Little Wolf learned that her own grandfather wrote songs that were performed during traditional ceremonies. So here's that first page of artwork. Poster beading. And then here are the canoes that her mother would tell her about and how they made beautiful canoes. Every summer, Little Wolf looked forward to going fishing with her grandfather. He would sell his salmon catch, and once he reached the limit that he was allowed to sell, Grandpa would catch salmon for his family, their village, and relatives living in the city. Little Wolf loved to eat the salmon jerky that her nanny made. And even when she ate it in the cold of winter, it reminded her of summertime. And her absolute favorite part of going on Grandpa's fishing boat was seeing the swift, magical dolphins that would swim and leap beside their boat. And as long as the dolphins were swimming with them, Little Wolf would forget to help Grandpa on the boat. She would smile for hours as the dolphins played. And Grandpa didn't mind. He loved seeing his granddaughter so happy. Here's the salmon. Here's a few of those dolphins. The next page is really beautiful. Here we have her and her grandpa. There's dolphins all around. A nice sun. Now, back in the city, when Little Wolf thought about her dolphin friends, she would move her arms up and down, just like the waves that they would swim through. And whenever she had a dream about swimming with her summer dolphins, she would wake up happy. This beautiful artwork here. She's sleeping and she's dreaming about her dolphins. And you see the seagrass or kelp as it's known. And there was a dream catcher above her in her bed. And Little Wolf's mom knew how much she loved to be outdoors. So on her 10th birthday, they took the bus to go get a surprise birthday present. And this present will help you get outdoors on the sunniest days and the coldest of days, her mother said. Little Wolf couldn't wait to find out what it was. They stopped in front of the building, and Little Wolf could hear dogs barking inside. It was a shelter for animals that needed new homes. So here you see this beautiful illustration of Little Wolf and her mom in front of an animal shelter. They went inside and looked at all the dogs that could be adopted. There were big, fluffy ones, tiny dogs that didn't even eat very much food, old dogs, and puppies. It was hard to choose which dog would be best for her family until she got to the last cage. And there stood a quiet, friendly dog with shaggy, multicolored fur. He licked Little Wolf's hand and sat on her feet and looked up at her with big, pretty eyes. And this was the one that she chose. She named him Prince and loved taking him for walks in the sunshine and the cold. And this was her favorite birthday present of her entire life. And there you see, there they are at the animal shelter. You see lots of different dogs, a beautiful carpet. And there's Little Wolf and her Prince meeting for the first time. Sorry, my page is sticking. There we go. At school, things were getting a bit easier. Little Wolf loved going to her school library and reading about people from all over the world. One day, she read a sad book about Black people who once were enslaved. The book was written by a wise man named Martin Luther King Jr. He wanted peace for people of all colors. His words inspired Little Wolf and made her feel hopeful. There she is in the library. She's got her moccasins on, and there's a book beside her open with a photo of Martin Luther King Jr. Little Wolf grew older and more confident and graduated from elementary school. She was nervous about starting high school, but also excited. Her mom took her shopping for her school clothes, and Little Wolf chose a white long-sleeved t-shirt with colorful pictures of girls from different cultures from around the world. There was even an indigenous girl on the shirt. Little Wolf loved the shirt. She wore it with pride and had her school pictures taken in it. And although she lived far away from her traditional territory and would travel the world to faraway places throughout her life, Little Wolf was always proud of her heritage. It was a part of her, like the wolf song in her heart. Here you see Little Wolf, and there's that t-shirt. So I just want to go through the book and point out a couple of things, okay? So in that first illustration, you see Little Wolf and her mom, and they're wearing those cowichan sweaters, which are like a very nice, thick and cozy wool sweater. And if you ever get a chance to wear one, you're very fortunate because not only they're warm, they're almost waterproof. I've been caught in the rain on numerous occasions and was able to stay dry and cozy until I get indoors. So I just wanted to talk briefly about that. Let me also just check my notes here. Okay. And then there wasn't anything about this. Oh, although I just wanted to point out this scene here is Little Wolf on her grandmother's steps. And that part of the story, often this part of the story does take place in Vancouver, BC, where she moved with her family after they left the country. And so here, let's talk a little bit about this part here. This part of the story where there's bullying happening. And so, as you know, today is Pink Shirt Day, where we can choose to include others in our games and in our days. Uh, so we're choosing to appreciate all people, whether they're boys or they're girls. They come from different cultures from us. We're choosing to appreciate that instead of bullying. And we can use our voices when there is a time when there's bullying. In this story, Little Wolf used her voice to howl. Later in life, she would use her voice to help others who were being bullied. And if you're in a situation where you do see bullying happening, and it's safe, you can say something. If you don't feel safe, go somewhere where you can speak to your teacher or a parent or an adult friend of your family who can help in this situation, even if it's afterwards, it can help. So long as you're safe, don't ever put yourself in danger. Uh, but it is important to use your voice. So I'll just give a little example of how later in my life I used my voice and showed through my actions. So even at work, there can be bullying. And I was at a job at one time, and there was a woman there we were working with who didn't speak English as clearly as everyone else. She was Italian, very friendly, nice lady. So I didn't like what I saw because I saw my coworkers would laugh at her because her English was bad. Um, they weren't laughing with her like, "Hey, that's really cute." They were actually laughing at her. These are adults. I was sad. So I chose to spend my lunches with her. We would sit together and I would learn about her and her culture and help her with her English, and we shared stories. And so that was an example I was using to show the other people I worked with that this was a very nice person. She had lots to offer and great stories. And just because she didn't speak English as clearly as everyone else, that was not a reason to bully her and leave her out. So I was really happy. I made a new friend. They started to say, that we could have great conversations and have fun together. And eventually, a couple of the ladies came around and they started talking to her. But bullying can happen anywhere. It can happen at your school. It can happen at work as adults. We've seen many times of that. It can happen when you're outdoors somewhere. I was at a bus stop once, and my daughters were really little. I have three daughters, and we had just come from a fair, and they had so much fun there. And our car was broken down, so we had to take the bus to and from. And while we were waiting for the bus, this older man started harassing a young girl who was about maybe 15. And I could tell she was really afraid. And there was probably 50 people at the bus stop and no one was doing anything. So I went up and I started talking to him and asked him what he was doing and why he was doing that. This was a young girl. She didn't deserve to be treated like that. And then he started to get mad at me. So because I was keeping him distracted, my husband was able to go across the street and get some assistance from the police, who came and took the man off the bus. The bus driver waited for the police. He didn't know what was going on. But so sometimes it's actually very helpful and urgent to help someone if they're being bullied. That girl was by herself. She sat at the back of the bus. And before she got off the bus, she came up to me and she said, "Thank you so much for helping me." And I was so touched. I was just helping her because I was concerned. This was a young woman who needed some help. So whenever you see a situation of bullying, please use your voice, but make sure you're safe, okay? And back when I was a kid and this story happened, there weren't as many teachers around, say, walking on the school grounds like there is now, say, at your recess time or your lunchtime. It's kind of like the Wild West back then. Things were a lot different. So I'm very happy that now, your teachers are more available and more aware of situations like that, of bullying. So just remember, we can all make a difference.
Awesome. So, my friends, what we do for a brain break is we pause and we get up and we move our bodies. Now, our brain break today is using things from the story in a would you rather game. So, I'm going to give you two options, and you're either going to do jumping jacks or you are going to do toe touches. So, I'm going to give you two options. But the deal is, when we are done, you have to promise to sit down, to be quiet, and be ready to listen. Is that a promise that you can make today? Give me a thumbs up if you can make that promise. All right, so you can stand up if you are able. You may do it sitting down as well if you want to. But so stand up and listen. So the first would you rather today. In the story, Little Wolf moved from the country to the big city. Little Wolf felt like she didn't belong there and dreamed of being in the country again. So the first question is, would you want to, if you could choose where you live, would you want to live in a city that's noisy and busy and full of concrete? Or would you want to live in the country where you are surrounded by forest and animals? So those are your options. And if you want to live in the country, you're going to do toe touches in a moment. Not yet. I'm going to say lock it in and then say I'm going to count to 5. You'll do it. And if you would rather live in the city, you're going to do jumping jacks. All right. So lock in your answer. If you want to live in the city, jumping jacks. Country, toe touches. Lock in your answer. And I'm going to count to 5 and you're going to do it while I count to 5. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Excellent. Freeze. Here we go again. The next question. Remember, you need to be quiet in between questions. Is the city where Little Wolf lived, there was surrounded by a long seawall, and Little Wolf loved walking along the seawall because finding nature in the city made her feel happy and at home. So this seawall is in Stanley Park in Vancouver, and that's the Lionsgate Bridge. And when I was little, my family would go there and we would ride our bikes around the seawall. So this question is, would you rather ride your bike along the seawall, which means you go fast and far, or would you rather walk, which means you'd probably see more nature if you are walking? So riding your bike goes far, walking gets to see really cool things. All right, so lock in your answers, and then I'm going to count to 5 and we'll do it. Here we go. Choose your answer. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Excellent. Freeze. All right, the very last one. In the summers, Little Wolf would go fishing with her grandfather, where she would see dolphins swimming alongside the boat. And then when she was back home in the city, she had a dream about swimming with dolphins. So my question for this one is, would you rather, would you rather swim with dolphins, or would you rather be a dolphin? So think about it. Would you rather be a human swimming with dolphins, or would you rather be an actual dolphin for a day? All right, lock in your answer. This is our last one. And here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Amazing. Have a seat. So we are about to do our Q&A. And during our Q&A, you will have a chance to ask questions. But like Teoni said, there are over 5,000 children joining us today, which means we cannot answer 5,000 questions in the 15 minutes that we have left today. So in the resource package, there is a letter to the author activity that you can send Teoni a letter. And she's giving a thumbs up that she would love that. You can send her a letter, ask her questions, or tell her things that you would like about the book, or what you would do if you experienced or saw someone experiencing bullying. She would love to hear your stories. So if you want to ask questions during our Q&A, if you're in the Zoom meeting, you can put your questions in the chat. If you are in the live stream, there is a form linked in the description that you can use to ask the questions. So I have that open on my screen and I will use that. Before we do, here is our not orange shirt day. What day is this? What colors are shirts? Pink. This is pink shirt day. This is our pink shirt day virtual classroom. And in this virtual classroom, you can learn more about bullying. And there are books to read about kindness and bullying and how to treat each other. And then also you can learn about Pink Shirt Day and do some activities. So this is at our kids.joyfullearning.net learning portal, where you can continue learning about bullying and continue learning about the ways that we can make a difference to people around us. So if we are ready, we can ask some questions. Teoni, are you ready for some questions from our friends today? You are muted again.
There. Okay. Just wanted to mention a couple of things. First of all, Little Wolf's family experienced bullying throughout their lives. Some of it was like institutional bullying, which is more organized and later became racism. My mom went to residential school. So that bullying kind of started way back then. And then Lynn Wolf experienced that herself at school. What I want to mention is sometimes if you're bullied and picked on, um, and you feel a lot of pain and sadness, you can pass that on to other people. Sometimes without knowing, and other times you're aware of it. What I want to say is in our family, we didn't do that. We learned a lot from those experiences and learned to appreciate all cultures and shared that. Instead of passing along pain, we shared our appreciation and inspiration from all cultures. And then I just wanted to show you this t-shirt still exists. Here it is in person, and you can see the First Nations girl. Obviously, this is a very old t-shirt. It's from a long time ago. First Nations person probably would not be depicted that way anymore. But it's fun to still have that t-shirt from my childhood. And interestingly enough, when all three of my daughters were around the age that I got that t-shirt, they all wanted to wear it for a short time too. Just wanted to share that little bit of
Awesome.
info. Ready for
Awesome.
questions?
Well, thank you for sharing that with us.
No.
So so what you just said was that when you were younger, you were one of the only Indigenous kids in your school, and you experienced bullying and being picked on and treated not well because you were different. And so what I said at the beginning was one of the ways that we can um, deal with bullying is by learning about the people around us and you said to have an appreciation for the people around us. So what was the things um, that little Wolf did to feel better about herself and her culture? And then what advice would you have for someone who is feeling similar? Someone who feels like an outsider because of something that makes them different. Perhaps it's their culture, or perhaps it's their brains. Maybe they have ADHD, or they're autistic, or they have other ways that they are different, or maybe they just have different interests and just feel different from others around them. What advice would you give those kids to feel more proud of themselves and more confident in school?
First off, sometimes it's not even that you feel different. It could be that other people see you as being different. In Little Wolf's case, what she did was she learned more about her culture, and that inspired her to learn more about other cultures. Because sometimes we can think people are different from us because their skin is different. Maybe they speak a different language, but really at the end of the day, we have so many things in common. We all want to be loved. We want to feel safe at school, in our homes. We all want to love others. We have so many things in common. So to look for the things in common, things that we share, and that really brings out more about the humanity, about who someone is. And so just by learning about your own culture and the cultures of the people around you can really make a big difference. And if it's something else, let's say it is ADHD or something along those lines, learn more about that. So you are equipped and know about whatever it is that someone sees as being different, or you may feel different. And also talk to the people around you. You have resource people. You have your teachers, you have counselors in your school, you have your parents, you may have grandparents, um, adults you feel safe with. You can also talk with them, and they can be part of your support team and cheer you on and help you to feel stronger.
Awesome. And I think what you said it makes a lot of sense that the more we learn about other people and who they are and what they like, we do see differences, but we also see the things that we have in common. And I think
Mm.
it's good to see the things we have in common, and also to understand people around us. Because the more we understand people around us, the more we'll be able to include them in the things we do and help them feel like they belong. So I have a couple questions. We have a couple questions coming in about your book. I have a green screen, so it looks silly because all the green disappears. But I have a question about, we have some questions about your book. So in the book, you tell a story about little wolf walking along the seawall. And we are wondering, a lot of people are wondering if that actually happened, if that is a real story or just something that was made up for the book.
No, actually, it's a real experience. It's happened twice in my life. As a child, a little wolf is mostly me, by the way. There are other aspects of the three generations of the women in my family, my mom, myself, and my daughters, that are written into the character of Little Wolf. But that did happen to me. It happened in Vancouver along a seawall in Stanley Park. And then later in life, for the last 10 years, I've lived in the Victoria area on Vancouver Island. And it's happened here too. And you know something? It was too funny. I was wearing a red jacket when that happened. It was an early spring day, like early April, had just been raining. The sun was coming out. It was beautiful. And I'm walking along this seawall, kind of similar in Victoria. I look down and there's an otter. And, it just looked right. It was looking right at me. And it just followed me along that walkway a number of times that spring. And I didn't want to tell anyone exactly where it was because I knew it lived close by and I wanted to keep it safe because that is very busy, just like the seawall. Lots of people out enjoying the scenery.
Awesome. So another question that we have is, and this is a great question, is on the front cover of your book and on a
Mhm.
couple of other pages, there is a butterfly and then the same butterfly on the couple of other pages. So our friends are wondering if that butterfly is symbolic of something or if there's a reason why it shows up in a few prominent places throughout the book.
That's actually something that the illustrator created on her own. And just a reference to all animals and all creatures just being very beautiful and part of our scenery. And hopefully we notice them along the way.
Awesome. So your book is illustrated by Natasha Davies,
Yes.
and who is a Coast Salish artist and graphic designer. Can you tell us about a couple of ways that she incorporated Indigenous culture into the pictures, into the drawings in your book?
Sure. Well, firstly, I worked very closely with her. Um, I wanted to make sure that images were just really colorful and bright and like what jumped off the shelf at you when you were walking by in case you didn't know about this book yet. It might catch your eye and go, oh, hey, what's this book about? So we worked very closely together to bring uh, Indigenous and First Nations imagery into the story to help bring the story to life.
Awesome. So we do Coast Salish art classes with Andrea Fritz, who's an artist in Victoria. We have one coming in a couple of weeks of
Right.
or next week um, to learn how to draw an eagle. And one of the things that we have learned through our classes with her is about the basic Coast Salish shapes. And that is one of the things that I noticed in the book is that the artwork has a lot of the basic Coast Salish shapes
Yeah.
in it as well. So that is really neat. So we are actually running out of time today. I was hoping that we get a chance to ask some more questions, but you know what? It has been a great time and a great opportunity to hear your story and to learn about your experiences or Little Wolf's experiences growing up. And so I just wanted Teoni just say thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And my friends, since our time is coming to an end together, we are going to need to wrap up. But today we've talked about how celebrating diversity and taking the time to get to know and understand others and including them is a powerful way to stand up against bullying. And when I was teaching in a classroom, we had a classroom motto and it began with, we are all unique individuals. And in this class, we all belong. So it is my hope for you guys that through our event today and through the conversations you're going to continue having with your teachers for the rest of the day and throughout your time, is that my hope for you is that you will understand and believe that you are a unique individual and feel like you belong in your class and that you will do your best to make other people feel like they belong in your class as well. So as we wrap up, I would love it if you could write in the chat or on the Q&A forum just one thing that you appreciated about Teoni's presentation or something new that you learned, and so that I can share those with Teoni. But also remember, if you want to write her a letter, she will accept those as well. So Teoni, before we go, do you have one last thing you would like to say to us today? One last word um, for us, some advice or something to leave us with?
I do have one last thing I'd like to say, and that is that please join me in making a wish. Some people might call it a prayer for all children in Canada around the world. And think about the one thing you really love about your school. Is it that your cousin comes to your school? Do you feel really safe and welcome? Is there a great art program? Whatever it is you like, think about that thing for a moment and send that out as a wish or a prayer for all children across Canada and around the world to have a really great school experience like you're able to have. And thank you so much, Giasica in our language, for being with me today on this very important day. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming and sharing your story with us today, Teoni. And friends who are with us, thank you all for taking time out of your day to learn about these important things. And I hope that you will continue to learn about celebrating the diversity of people around you and standing up against bullying. So I'll say goodbye to everyone. Thank you for being here with us, and we will see you again soon. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.